Okay. Well, hey, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. Yeah, and welcome to the conference. I only have Pete for about 20 minutes now, so I feel like, shall we get into it?
Yeah, we got a great intro. Let's jump in.
Definitely. So I feel like a good place to start, Pete, is, tell me a little bit about your career path and what led you to sitting across from me today.
Absolutely. I'm sure, like everybody, my career path was not super well planned out. Maybe you're like me. I went to college, got my degree in criminal justice, and during that time, I took a job. I was working for the Home Depot for college beer money, truth be told. But ended up staying there 16 years and moving up, and I was managing stores there. I left there in 2013, not knowing what I wanted to do when I grow up. And went and got my coaching certification. While I was at Home Depot, I fell in love with leadership development and was really excited about growing and developing managers. So that's what I knew I kind of wanted to do that, and came across a job posting at Dish for a leadership development specialist, facilitating leadership workshops. So I applied and somehow convinced them to give me the job. And that was my first real job in L&D or anything in human resources.
Mhm.
And so I was traveling around doing our leadership workshops and fell in love with that and said, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. This is my job. And of course, like everything else along my career journey, it was not the case,
Mhm.
and took on bigger responsibilities, whether managing our instructional design team, moved over into our call center operations and did some training over there. And then in 2019, got into the job that I'm in now. In fact, Rochelle Carpenter, who's speaking later on a panel, she's the one that actually promoted me into this job, which has kind of grown into what it is today in talent management, where we oversee all the leadership development programs still, the onboarding. We do all of the talent programs like performance and succession, and then we support our HR business partners in a lot of those aspects. We do the employee listening strategy, our diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and then we also do all of our selection assessments as well.
Perfect. Well, now that you're at Dish, do you have any updates that you want to share with us?
Yeah, Dish, we being a local company, we make it in the news quite a bit. It's been an interesting year. Starting back in February, we were actually, like a lot of big tech companies this year, we were a victim of a cyber attack.
Mm.
So that started the year off in the spirit of adventure, which is one of our core values, but not the kind of adventure you want to be on.
That's
It
one
was,
way to put it.
yeah, it was a challenge. We were reeling a little bit, and we had a lot of big goals we needed to hit this year. And so, what was great about it though is the team was super focused, both the HR team in making sure all of our frontline employees got paid on time, all the way through supporting the business leaders who are working on some of our big wireless milestones. So in June, we had a major milestone we had to hit for the FCC, which was providing coverage on our network to 70% of the population. And we hit that. We were actually about 73, 74% at that date. And this is a network that's never really been stood up. It's the
Mhm.
first cloud native Open RAN network for wireless, and we're calling it the world's first smart network. And so that was a big milestone to be able to hit that. And then right on the heels of that, late summer, we announced that we are merging with our sister company, EchoStar, and we have common ownership. Our chairman and founder also owns that company and is still a chairman there. And so we're merging these two companies together. And then September 15th, we just had the brand launch of Boost Infinite, which is our first postpaid offering on our network. And so, big iPhone announcement along with everybody else in September. So, a couple things going on, throughout the year.
Yeah, definitely a couple.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about the merger in a second. But first, can you tell me a bit about Dish's relationship with the city of Denver?
Yes. So this dates back to 1980. We had three co-founders, so Charlie and Candy Ergen and Jim DeFranco. They had met years ago in Texas, and then late 70s into 1980, Charlie and Candy were actually down in Arizona. Candy was going to school, and they had this idea. They saw these big 10-foot C-band satellite dishes and decided they wanted to go into business and start a franchise. And so they looked at what were the territories that were available, trying to plan it out, and landed on Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah with the opportunity to expand into New Mexico and Arizona. And so, kind of just putting a pin on the map, what made sense, they chose Denver as their home base, and in 1980 opened their first storefront on South Broadway, and we've been Colorado based ever since. In fact, our current corporate headquarters is in Inglewood at the Meridian office complex, and then our wireless headquarters is in the old historic Riverfront Shopping Center over off Santa Fe and Bowles.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about how would you define Dish's corporate values?
Corporate values are kind of, I mean, they really are the DNA of our company. We, more than any company I've worked with and a lot of colleagues I work with, most of our vendors, when we kind of share how we view our values, um, it's very intense compared to a lot of other companies. And it started off, really, our chairman, he said, we could have done these exercises around, vision finding and what the values are going to be, integrity, honesty, customer service, those types of values. He said, at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion I wanted the values to be, who are the people I want to work with? What are the values they have? And originally it came up, it was pride, adventure, and winning. And you're thinking, wait, is that one of the seven deadly sins that could be your corporate value? Different kind of pride as we talk about it, more like you would think of school pride and pride in your work, that type of pride. And that was from like mid 80s up until 2017. Those were kind of the values. But in 2017, realizing all the work that we were doing, whether it was in video services or now going into acquiring spectrum and trying to think about the wireless future, we added curiosity to that because it was super important that we were in a learning culture as well. And so we added that to it. So on our pre-selection assessments, we assess against those values with a competency framework and a personality model. It's baked into all of our development programs. They're not just posters on a wall. They really are kind of central to what we do.
Right. So during times like these, then during your merger, how do you retain those corporate values?
It's a great question that we're in progress of thinking through right now. When we first were talking about the merger, it was going to be Dish as the acquiring entity on EchoStar. When we filed our S4 in just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we that had changed. EchoStar is the acquiring entity, and so similar cultures but different values as they're written out. So we've got to work through that. I think, for us, it's going back to what are the values as they're lived out and what is important to our team members. And so we've got to see what those prevailing values are. I like to think that curiosity, pride, adventure, and winning will carry over because we have it anchored to all of our talent management practices. But I think that's work that still needs to be done, and we'll have to think through that. But I think at the end of the day, going through the merger is also making sure we are doing the right thing for our team members and making sure that they're front of mind focus for everything that we're doing.
Right. And speaking of your team members, I mean, how do you build trust with those team members during times of, great workplace change?
Yeah, we haven't always done this right, I think. And this year we launched a whole new listening strategy to try to get better at this. But I think the first step is you got to listen to your employees and understand what's important to them, what are they stressed about, what are their anxieties, what are their pain points. So I think that's a big part of that. And then um, being clear and transparent in the decisions. And I think our leadership team's done a really good job this time around of being a lot more transparent and having more upfront communications with all team meetings, announcements on our intranet, being just very upfront about here's what we know, here's what we don't know. And I think we're probably lucky that we've got two companies that have common control that are merging, and that we don't have to have everything figured out day one.
Right.
So I think there's now there's some safety in that, but that can also be a bad thing, and that employees are looking for some of that certainty that we don't have.
Right. Well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, Now that you're moving forward and looking to recruit new employees, what qualities do you look for in these employees and how has that changed since COVID?
Good question. I think for us, the core of what we look for is pretty consistent. I would say even maybe a little bit before COVID, it started to change as um, just the emerging workforce was changing. The younger workforce that was emerging had different goals and objectives. So I think we had an opportunity to make sure we were aligning to that. We hire for three things. We really are focused on energy, intelligence, and need to achieve. And so we want those folks who are smart, really driven to deliver results, hit the goals, that can adapt and be resilient. But I think what we noticed a little bit before COVID and certainly after COVID is we're going into a new industry. You think about the wireless business and all the things that we're trying to do we've never done before. And so I think we recognize that we need to be hiring for experience a little bit as well. RF engineering is something that no matter how smart I think I am and how much energy I have, I'm not going to get RF engineering. It's a pretty complicated topic. And so we had to recognize we had to go out and find people that had certain skill sets.
For sure.
We still wanted that cultural alignment so they could be successful in our organization. COVID, a lot of people, whenever we go to events, we're talking to people and they're like, oh, how long have you been back in the office? And to some of them, they're meeting each other for the first time live in the meeting room because they've been all over the country working from home. And we just kind of look at them funny. We're like, we were actually back in the office about 7 weeks after we went home. So we never really were away from the office. So um, that's different for a lot of people as they're coming into the workforce, and
Yeah.
that's kind of core of who we are, and not being apologetic about that,
Hmm.
but also recognizing that it does have its limitations when you're looking to hire some skilled labor.
Right. Now, and why is it so important for Dish's work atmosphere to be in person?
For us, a couple of key things is one, the problems we're trying to solve. A lot of times it's really easy when you can just walk around the corner, talk to somebody, brainstorm. If you need to get a little war room together to collaborate on figuring out like RF engineering, a new market is something where you kind of need boots on the ground.
Right.
And so having our teams be able to travel and go train the project managers or go work with the engineers to troubleshoot was super important. And then the second component of that is, a lot of our workforce is still a frontline workforce. We have call center agents, we have in-home service technicians, sales agents, production facilities, and they're there. They're on the front lines. They're in front of our customers, and we want to make sure we can meet our employees where they're at.
Right. But it's tough, right? I mean, how do you assess what skills are going to be crucial to your company's future today?
We're working through this. So right
Mhm.
now, 2023 has been a big year in talent management for us as well. We're doing something. Kind of integrating all of our talent management practices. I mentioned we do some assessments on the front end that are anchored to some personality and competency models. So we went and worked with our partner, SHL, and we licensed those competency models and then mapped them back to our values and our manager commitments, which is really what we are our tenets of what good management looks like at Dish. And from there, those competencies are a group of knowledge, skills, and abilities. So we know those are the skills that'll be important for good leadership and for good culture fit. Then our talent acquisition team's in the process of taking that and expanding that to some more functional competencies and some job relevant skills. Obviously, we know some of the key skills that are important, things like generative AI, large language models. For us, engineering, a lot of different engineering disciplines that are super important. So we know we're going after those skills. And then our talent acquisition team is doing a really good job of getting out to where those employees are and doing a lot of work with a lot of different partners to drive brand awareness, talk about the exciting things that we're working on,
Yeah.
because we know that encourages a lot of people to be part of something big.
Right. So as y'all are moving through this merger process, I mean, what have you found to be some of the greatest challenges?
Communication, I think,
Yeah.
is a big one. There's obviously certain things we can communicate, certain things we can't communicate. And obviously, team members, our employees want certainty. They want to know, hey, is everything going to be okay? Is my job going to be okay? And there's a lot of things we don't know right now. And we're a lot of the elements of the merger are interesting because the companies have a lot of synergies and not a ton of overlaps.
Mhm.
But if you think about shared service functions like HR, like IT, finance, there's obviously going to be some overlap and redundancy. So what does that look like? And so that's kind of an interesting challenge. The second one, as we just talked about, is what's the prevailing culture going to be? What are the espoused values, and then how do we integrate that into all of our development? We're going to have managers from two different organizations coming together. How do we get them, collaborating effectively? We all love to say we're good at collaboration, and then we get into the room, and sometimes we get a little protective of our territory.
Mhm.
So maybe that's just me. I don't know. So I think that's the other one is how do we all get around the table and recognize what is the right thing to do going forward for the company, but B for our employees.
And conversely, I mean, have you found any silver linings or, I don't know, pleasant surprises about the merger process?
Tremendous learning opportunity. And I think this is where you really find out how resilient our employees are. Especially, we've got a lot of newer in career team members that have joined the company the last couple of years, and those of us who are of the generation before always love to bag on the next generation. Um, but recognizing the resilience, the tenacity, honestly, there's a lot of positivity in the workforce and
Mhm.
excitement for what the future is. And I think our leadership team's done a good job of casting that clear picture of the vision, clear picture of the future vision, knowing that there's a lot we don't know. Like, what
Right.
is the future of wireless? That's still, us and all the other major wireless players are trying to figure that out. What does it look like to move from a mostly US based company to a global company, I think
Right.
is another thing. And people are jumping in. They're curious. They want to learn. So we're seeing our values show up a lot throughout the process, I think, as well.
Right. So I guess how do you merge two separate corporate communities into one company? Can you
Uh,
give us a play
We
by
may
play?
have to do a follow-up in March after the fact. Yeah, I think the way my team's thinking about it, I think there's a lot of, you know, uh, understanding and listening to the two teams from the two companies that are bringing this merger together, and strategically, what are going to be the big goals on the back end of the merger. Um, I think it's for us, we're thinking a lot about organizational development. How do we bring these teams together? Those teams that are going to have folks from both companies, their headquarters is in Germantown, Maryland. So a lot of those team members are going to stay out there. We need to go through that storming, forming, norming process. And so, how do we help support that? The landscape of reporting structures probably looks different as we bring these companies together. Even just within the HR function, their HR function's smaller than ours because they only have a couple thousand employees versus our 14,000. And so they do a variety of different things that we're more specialized at times. So how do we bring even just the HR team together and do that? And I think um, just having some teaming sessions is going to be super important for us to go through and do that. And then our HR business partners are going to be critical to our success because they're the ones that are meeting with the leaders in their staff meetings on a regular basis, talking about workforce planning, talking about succession, um, talking about trust building, communication, all those things that are going to be important to put it together. So I think we're figuring out as we go. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. We say this a lot at Dish is, hey, we're building the plane while it's flying, and sometimes you got to figure things out as you go.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to corporate leaders who are finding themselves in similar situations? And alternatively, what would you tell employees who are, hesitant or worried about these big changes coming up?
As a part of the HR leadership team, I would say it's so critical for leaders to make sure you just stop and listen and truly take time to hear what employees are feeling, what leaders are feeling, and have just a great landscape of what everybody's feelings are. So take that time to listen. And then the other one is once you know the problem to solve, don't assume that the leaders,
Mhm.
because they're the highest level in the organization, have the answers. Generally, the people that are closest to the work are going to be the ones that can
Mhm.
really help you figure this out. And we've seen this time and again. And then for employees, I'm also an employee going through this, and
Mhm.
I'm not the decision maker on a lot of these things. Um, Sometimes you don't control what the outcome is, and what will be, and it's understanding that what you can control is work hard, continue to get better at your work, and focus on the objectives that you have in front of you to deliver the best results you can. And I think that helps keep everything moving forward. And as the merger happens, then you're in a better position on the back end.
Right. Well, and I think as a final question, I only have you for one more minute,
Yeah.
but this might be a little bit on the nose, but we might as well answer this right off the bat. I mean, how do corporate leaders tap their potential and boost their performance? What advice would you give to them?
Well, I'm biased. Coaching to me is the greatest way to gut check your own thinking, identify your blind spots, work through those. If you're not working with a coach, hire a coach. I think that can't be understated, or maybe overstated. I think it is understated. Get a coach. I think that if you have coaching available to you at your company, take advantage of it because that will really help you make the right decisions and get through the challenging times better.
Well, Pete, thank you so much
Oh, thank you.
for
It's
having
my
this
pleasure.
chat with me. I wish we had 20 more minutes. And thank you guys so much for coming to our opening fireside chat. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. But that's it for Pete and me.
Thanks, everybody.